We are the board. We have assessed your defensive capabilities as unable to withstand us, unless you watch this video. Hi, we are Joe.
I'm Joe, and this is the BlueBrixx Borg Drone, or at least the bust of a Borg drone. Now, this is a set that I didn't necessarily feel like I needed to have, but I saw a BlueBrixx video about it, how the designers were talking about the model, and they spend the first 3 or 4 minutes of the video just talking about how difficult it was to build. And at 1,600 pieces and a cost of just over $43, I felt like that was worth the risk of giving it a try. And then when BlueBrixx made the announcement that they were losing the Star Trek license, I went ahead and bought it, along with any other Star Trek sets that I had put on my wish list that I wanted to get before they went out of production. As far as difficulty of the build, I will say it was challenging on the concentration, and we'll look at some of the finer details later, but I think the difficulty was far more in the design of the build, which is pretty remarkable, I think, for something that was not produced by, say, a different brick building company. So let's take a closer look to see what was involved in assembling this Borg drone. I'll start off by saying that the build included 5 numbered bags for the 1,600 pieces, and really they're not necessarily divided up logically, other than the first bag is where you build the core, and then essentially you start building the model from the bottom up. It makes me think of what it would look like if you watched a 3D printer build the model, because once you have the core in place, you're really just kind of building the front, the back, the shoulders, and then you add more details very gradually until you get all the way to the top of the head. One of the more challenging aspects of the model are that the colors are all some form of gray. Now, there is one printed tile. There's no stickers. The printed tile is just a plate or a tile that shows that this is a Borg drone, along with this logo in the middle, which I've never really associated as being a Borg logo. In fact, I never knew if the Borg actually had a logo. But it also has their catchphrase, "Resistance is futile." And almost all of the colors in the model, both on the inside and out, are either black, dark bluish gray, this shade of gray called gunmetal gray, as someone commented on my Excelsior video, and I think that's a great description of that marbled, just slightly not quite black color, and then the light bluish gray color, with only little tiny bits of red and green in here that kind of, I don't know, give it just a little bit more life instead of just being a big gray blob. As for the build process, if I could compare it to anything, it would be like a combination of building like the buildable creatures from Star Wars, like the Yoda or Grogu or a Porg, combined with the techniques that are used to build, say, the helmet collection. For something as complicated as this, there is a surprisingly small amount of technic. There is just a little bit on the inside to give it stability, but not an overwhelming amount. In fact, there are only a few technic pins in the whole set, and one of them here is in the details of the eye, just to put like some type of laser in there. So the connections are standard system connections, or a lot of clips and bars and a lot of studs on the side bricks. Starting from the chest, which is the first part that you build after you build the core, is you build the chest plate here, which feels like the challenge was made, can you make a chest plate for a bust entirely out of greebling? And we can see lots of these little, I don't even know what these are called, these little paddle pieces, but they are everywhere throughout the build. And lots of bars and clips and these barrel type pieces to make it look like there's all kinds of either pistons or actuators or whatever type of machinery is attached to this particular drone, who, by the way, is not meant to resemble any specific drone. It's not Locutus, it's not Hue. It's just a typical Borg, which would be any humanoid that has cybernetic implants and has had their skin tone turned gray. Usually the only skin that you ever see is in the face, so that's why the chest and shoulders here are covered up with various plates. The back was also not ignored. There's not nearly as much detail in the back, but it's not just plain. We still got lots more of these other pieces. And we have some more clips here. They don't clip onto anything, but I like to think that if you really wanted to customize this, you could add more tubes to those clips or just rearrange where these flex tubes go. And we got some backpack here that has some other pieces there just to give it texture, more greebling. And you can see that these plates, both in the chest and in the back, they connect at angles, and they aren't just hanging there. They are very, very stable. That one's fixed, that one's fixed. So whoever designed this did a lot of work to make sure that those angles were created the way that they were. And speaking of angles, we have the neck piece, which is the next part, which actually you build that up and then you slide it over the core, and it is actually just sitting there on top of the shoulders. So there are no connections between this and this. But what I think is one of the most satisfying parts of this build is there is a spot on each side for putting one of these angled plates, and it fits absolutely perfectly. And as a result, this neck piece does not move at all. We have one of those angled plates on each side, and that neck plate and that neck piece is not going anywhere. Once you've built the neck, it's on to the head, where from the front, the most obvious things that we can see are the eyes. We have one more humanoid looking eye, which is a white 2x2 round tile with a hole in the middle. And then we've got another one of these pieces in the center, like these paddle pieces, in the center of a green hollow stud to give it the look of a green eye. And then we have the cybernetic eye here, which has all kinds of rods sticking out of it for sensors or probes or whatever, along with the technique of using a rod inside of a Technic pin to make it look like there could be some type of laser. Plus, we've got some of the minimal color that's here with the green light and a red light. We had a few more of these on the chest plate also. And we also have more tubes in his head. If we go all the way around, you can see where some of the cybernetic implants are being wrapped around. Those are represented in that gunmetal gray color. Here in the back, there's not a whole lot of detail, but we still have more of that darker gray. And when we finally get back to our drone's left side, we've got more of the gunmetal gray and just some more greebling here. Then we can kind of see our drone here in profile, and the head is, I don't know if it's 100% perfect, but I don't think it needs to be at the top. But it's also got definitely a distinct nose and chin piece that makes it look like more than just a plain cyborg head. So I didn't keep a stopwatch on how long it took to build this model, but I did work on it across 2 days. I know I finished it on the night of the Super Bowl, and I think the key to keeping your sanity in this type of model was to spread out the build across a long time to relax and enjoy it, and it was fairly enjoyable. Or the similarity of the colors of bricks was not a problem for me. It's pretty easy to tell apart the black from the gunmetal, from the dark gray, from the light gray. And while that often bothers me, it didn't really bother me that much with this build. One thing I'd also like to point out is, unlike so many BlueBrixx models that I've done, there are really no crazy elements or build techniques in this model. Like, there's nothing that's unique to BlueBrixx in here that you couldn't find a similar piece from another brick company. The exception would be all this gunmetal gray stuff, which I know is not in the Lego catalog. But if you use black for that, I don't think it severely hurts the model. I think it would still look pretty good. I don't think it would look quite the same. There was only one instance where I had to do the trick where you insert the little bead inside a brick to turn it from an anti-stud to a stud. And I actually was looking over the model trying to find that piece, and I couldn't find it, so I don't even know how necessary that is. So at first, this was something I didn't necessarily feel like I needed, and I bought because it was a good deal. And now the more I look at it, the more I really appreciate just how well done it is. The angles are very subtle, and my guess is that the model maker took a long time iterating this to make sure it got every angle just the way they wanted it to. So thanks for stopping by to check out the Borg drone. I've got a 3-day weekend coming up, and I've got to pick one of my larger projects to do for that. But until then,
remember, today is a good day to build. Resistance is futile.